Hi, having been the family scapegoat, you are definitely not allowed to have boundaries. You're not allowed to set any type of a limit on poor behavior that you're subjected to. And you're certainly not allowed to do anything about it if it happens. So you might have these natural built-in boundaries. And when you're like, hey, you can't do this, this is wrong, whether it's to you or someone else, you're still shamed and blamed, and then you get all this toxic guilt and this toxic shame. And one thing you're definitely not taught to do is to leave. And when you leave, you can feel so very guilty. So we're going to take a look at some of that toxic guilt and shame surrounding leaving in just a minute. Hi, my name is Olivia, and I'm passionate about helping you understand what relational trauma is so that you can heal and grow and move on from it. Today, everything comes from my book, A Scapegoat No More Forever. You can find it on Amazon. I'll put a QR code on the screen and the link will be in the description. So when you're the scapegoat, you're not allowed to have any boundaries. You are so punished if you try to have a boundary. And truly, learning to have boundaries is one of the fastest way to get out of being a scapegoat. So instead, we just try to talk about what's happening to us and say how this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, but nothing ever changes until one day when we wake up and we start to learn some stuff about ourselves and our experience. And really, I think part of that natural progression is to almost become obsessed with learning about narcissism. I think that's kind of early on in the phase, but there comes a day when it's like, okay, enough of that, like, yuck. I'm so over learning about the narcissist. I don't care. I get it. But then, you're still going to have these lingering interests and still wanting to decide, is this a narcissist? Is this narcissist? So you just kind of start to see narcissists everywhere. But truly, that is part of the process. And it is so powerful because you're like, I knew it wasn't me. I knew it wasn't me. And wow, this is like a textbook. It's like they all go to the same school. How are they all functioning so similarly? And we're like this byproduct. And so guess what? Because we're all exposed to these similar tactics that go into develop and creating a scapegoat, it's no wonder we have so many of the same traits, those lingering traits. So one of the things is when you get to a place where you're like, okay, I want to understand me better. I want to understand my process better. I want to understand what happened to me. And so that's part of why learning about a narcissist is so powerful. But there comes a point when I want to look at me because that's who I have control over. That's who I can do something about. That's where I can make changes is in myself. So if we start to look at that, because we're never taught to leave, when we try to leave, it can feel wrong. It can feel bad because most perpetrators are so great at not only making you believe it's your fault that everything is coming to you because you got it coming, but also that they're everything. They're the most important thing to you and you cannot survive without them. And so now I have this most important thing that I can definitely not survive without. And now if I try to leave, then I'm not going to make it. Or they convince you that they are so fragile by constantly reminding you of their mortality, and so the rest of the family are going to say, he's old, she's old, they're not going to be around forever. And so it's like just this constant reminding of their mortality, which I like to call the death seed. There's an entire section set apart for that, understanding about the death seed. But they're either so fragile and like, how can you leave someone who's fragile? How can you leave someone who's going to face their own mortality someday, even though every single one of us is? So I'm scared to leave because you're everything and I'm going to be left with nothing. Or I'm scared to leave because you're so fragile. And how can I leave this poor, hurting, innocent, fragile person who just doesn't know why they do what they do, which is all a load of garbage. They know exactly what they're doing. So it's really hard. And then I'm going to feel guilt. There is another reason. And part of that is, on some level, especially if you're within a whole system, if you leave the tormentor, a lot of times you lose the entire system. You lose all your family. You lose all the holidays. You lose everything that sort of like went into making up your life. You literally have to face risking losing it all to save yourself. And that doesn't seem like it would be a hard decision to make, but it is a very hard decision to make because you think, is it really that bad? You know, especially when you're taught it's not that bad. Why do you always have to complain? Why do you always have to have a problem? Why can't you just not say anything? Why can't you just sit there and smile? Okay. And you know, and so you're like, okay, so let me not say anything. Let me just sit there and smile. And guess what? It gets worse. So there is no winning when you're the scapegoat because it's not a game designed for you to ever win. You're never going to win. And they think like, well, is winning everything? Do I really even care? Well, really what you're losing is your life. And what you're winning is your life if you leave. So yeah, I do care. I do care if I win in that because I have one life, one. And if I keep in that scapegoat role and I keep playing that game, all it's doing is wasting my time. All it's doing is wasting the life I could be living that I was designed and created and supposed to be living. So I can keep handing these pearls up for nothing but someone's amusement until they're bored with me, and then they're going to throw me out, and then they're going to pick me back up again and use me for whatever, and then when they're bored, they're going to throw me out. That is my life, to be at that beck and call. You know, sometimes, well, I won't give this example because it's too probably triggering, so I'm just going to stay away from it. But if you think of any other thing on the planet, if you found out that thing was being abused, why in the world would you take it out of the abuse, love it, get it healed, get it whole, and then send it back to its abuser, thinking it's going to be different? Then it gets abused again, and now you're going to love it and care for it and nurture it, get it whole, get it healthy, teach it that it means something, that it's valuable, that it's important, and then hand it back over to the abuser again. Like, how many times would we want to do that? I would not even want to do that once. It would be, you had a time, you were abusive, and now, however that relationship looks, it has to be different. Like, they're never going to be in your care again, but you can, you know, maybe have care from a distance. Maybe it's care that's once in a while, but to go back to what that was, not a chance. You're not going to do that again because this is too precious and too valuable. So just thinking about that, sometimes when we take ourselves out of that equation, it's almost like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, why would I do that? But again, it's very hard when you face losing everything because there's, you know, a chance that you love so many things about the system or so many people within the system. And there probably was someone who showed you care and kindness at some point, probably not the tormentor. Tormentors rarely show care and kindness. And if they are, it's because they have a separate agenda. So it actually hurts worse when you find out they were only kind because of whatever this agenda was. So there's many reasons why leaving and moving forward is so very difficult and complicated. But if you just keep remembering what I'm winning is my life, and those that love me are going to want me to have a life. Those that love me and truly care about me and my well-being, they're going to want me to be free. So part of the introduction talks about when you learn how not just to move on, but to move on without that toxic shame and guilt, that's truly where the liberation comes. That's the part that's liberating. And to get there is a process. The whole thing is a journey. So again, you can find this book on Amazon. I will put the link in the description. I'll also link another video that's super helpful, and I'll put some videos on the screen to help you learn more about relational trauma. So I will see you in the next one. Take good care.